All right, friends. Well, welcome along to another episode of Sweet Tea and Coffee. And today we are doing something a little bit different. We've done this before with Mark, but man, if you listened to last week, you know this story is just right in the middle.
And we just left you hanging.
We just
kind of just left you.
Yeah, and Kara was so gracious to spend about 2 hours with us just talking through their story. And so we've split that in half. And what you're going to hear today is the second part of our conversation. We recorded this all in one session, but we broke it up for you and put it into these two segments. So you're going to hear the second half of that conversation. And also want to say, before we get started, we've got another friend of the pod to shout out all the way.
This is fresh. I just got this email like
hours,
maybe an hour or so ago. Like it's hot off the press.
Hot off the electronic
and it's
mailing press.
It's from one of our more northern friends of the pod.
That's
It's
right.
from Josh Williford all the way up there in New York City. And we're almost global. I mean, I guess we talk about being global, but we've got friends of the pod.
We don't know how. We feel like it's just like
it's probably an accident.
Spam bots or whatever that are listening to our podcast. But Josh is a real person.
He's a real person.
Yeah.
We know him. And he said that he has to have a sticker. We talked about the stickers.
Yes.
And I kind of agree with him because he said he's a diehard listener. He's listened even to our terrible episodes. He's listened to every episode he's listened to. So we're going to have to send a pack of stickers up there.
Pack. Josh gets a pack.
He gets a pack.
Man, we're really starting to get generous with our stickers. So last time we said that, what qualifies as being a friend of the pod and getting a sticker, and now we're sending packs globally. Yeah. This is really taking
But
off.
he talked about how these stories have just been really impactful to him to hear, people that we may not normally hear from, or what he said would be lost stories, get to hear from their own mouths, their stories. So,
well, thanks for sticking around for this. This is so good. Again, big thank you to Kara for all the time that she spent with us going through this. You guys are going to be so blessed by the rest of this story. So hang around. Okay, so jumping back in, one of the things I alluded to before our break was the extraordinary way that God allowed all three girls to connect. And one of the things that is in your story that really stood out is the night where, I think it was the night, or it was an early morning, where you noticed Hannah and Kate communicating on the monitor. And maybe I'm mixing stories, but where you heard Hannah saying, "Yes, Hannah's here." So yes. Talk about their relationship. It's really, really special.
Yeah. So going back to when we first got the diagnosis, I felt like one of the things that I grieved after I grieved, like life was not going to look like what I had envisioned. I grieved that Hannah and Kate would not have a relationship that I had envisioned. And the Lord just showed me how wrong I was. But so even from a young age, I can remember when we took Kate in, when we were trying to figure out feeding wise what was going on, we had to go in and do a test. And the test was to feed Kate and then lay her flat and see how long it took for her stomach to empty. And I remember Randall and I clearly telling the technician, like, if we lay her down, like, she's going to throw up. And they were like, no, you have to lay her down. So we laid her down and she threw up. And so I remember being so aggravated because we had gotten up both of these babies early. Yeah. We hadn't allowed Kate to eat because she needed to eat there. We drove all the way there. And I remember just being so frustrated. And when I'm buckling Kate in, Hannah reaches over and pats her hand, and so just the sweetness of that. But what you're talking about there, I think, is Kate had a really bad cold, and Kate and Hannah shared a room, And Kate was in her crib, and Hannah had these 2 lammies that she loved. And I could not tell them apart, but she could. And one's name was...
Twins. This is twin thing.
Yeah, twin lambs. Yeah. So one of my aunts had given us 2 lambs, but Hannah had claimed them. And so we had Big Lammy and Little Lammy. And anyway, so I'm hearing them talking, and Hannah wasn't very big, but she was big enough to where she could crawl out of her toddler bed. And so as I'm walking closer to the monitor, not because I think they're talking, I'm afraid that Kate is going to cough and may spit up. So I'm looking over to look, and I see this little movement and a hand. And I realized that it was either Big Lammy or Little Lammy that Hannah has dropped in with Kate.
Wow.
And she's standing there, and she says, "It's okay, Kate. Hannah's right here." So, yeah, it was amazing. I really wondered if my girls would be able to be close given the prognosis of Kate. But, I can remember the first time we took them to an Easter egg hunt. And thinking oh, this probably isn't going to be much fun for Kate because she's not going to be able to get out of her stroller and pick up eggs. And Emily was a little bitty baby, and so I had Emily strapped on me. So I'm thinking I can't even take Kate out of her chair and just let her try and pick up eggs. So I thought, okay, well, we'll just see how this happens. Well, Hannah decided that Kate could hold the basket. So Kate held the basket, and Hannah ran and picked up eggs and brought them back to Kate. And, so just so many sweet moments like that. It was like the Lord knew sisters was important to me. And so he just made a way for me to have those sweet, sweet moments in my heart.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Wow. With all 3 of them and the way that they uniquely connect to one another, that's amazing. And there's stories that go through. By the way, while we're here, we just need to take a brief aside and say that Hannah is also, how old is she?
She'll be 10 in July.
She's almost 10. She's the fastest 10-year-old on planet Earth.
Yeah.
She told me that.
She makes it look effortless, too.
I asked her the other day how fast her mile was. And she told me she's running in a 6-minute mile. So I just watch out, Olympics. Here comes Hannah Cooper. So we'll say that. But that's cool to see the Lord's provision even in their lives, and that. Absolutely. And like I said before we took the break, just that your decision, you and Randall's decision to not be in control. Yeah. Allowed for those relationships to take place in a way that they might not have if you were the ones in control, trying to go to every specialist all over the place and talk. So this is a good part, I think, maybe to talk about the provision of people, because the other thing that happens here that is a theme over and over. Obviously, we've already introduced Dr. Pena, and he plays a role throughout, and even writes this unbelievable letter that we got to share at Kate's memorial service. But even you have these really good friends, that move to Tyler at the very place where you need to be, so that the girls can play. And so talk about how, whether it's doctors or therapists, one therapist just deciding she's going to take weekends and come hang at your house through therapy. Just these amazing moments where God puts people in your life. Talk about God's provision through people, friendships, doctors, all that. And as you're watching that, what's that like to see people just show up for this? Yeah.
Yes. So, as you mentioned, the Martins, one of the things that we had looked into when our girls were 18 months old was a specific kind of therapy that at that time was only being offered. The closest location was Austin. And so Randall and I both felt like if in looking at something and trying to decide, is this best for Kate? If it wasn't best for our whole family, then it couldn't be what was best for Kate. And so we had looked into doing a therapy in Austin, which would require us to be in Austin at least 3 days. And because it was it's not a traditional therapy, so it's considered an experimental therapy, insurance would not cover it at all. So they wanted us to do 6 to 10 lessons, and each lesson was going to be $200. And then you come back the next month, and you do this again. And so we did a few lessons and just could not get peace about it. And I can even remember that weekend, praying, Lord, I know you're going to show us yes or no, yes or no. And being in the Psalms and getting to the scripture that says, wait on the Lord. And I remember thinking, God, they're telling me, Kate needs to have all this therapy by the time that she's, the sooner the better, because now's the time to make the neuro connections. And him just very clearly saying, wait. And so we waited and decided we do not need to be bringing our two 15-month-olds to Austin monthly,
Yeah.
And so we just kind of felt at peace about that. And right before I had Emily, so that would have made Kate and Hannah 2.5 years old, I just felt like I just need to look into this again. And so I started looking into it, and I was emailing a lady that lives in San Antonio, which is even further than Austin, but we have family that lives in San Antonio. So I was trying to figure out, is this worth looking into as far as we wouldn't have to pay for lodging, and would that make sense? And just kind of checking into that. And the lady mentioned to me that she would be happy to see Kate, but that she had a friend that was in Tyler. And part of why I had started looking into it again was we found out if you had a certified physical therapist or occupational therapist, they could do a lot of the things that the neuro movement therapy were doing, but it would be covered by insurance because you're also seeing a licensed occupational therapist. So we started looking into that, and so I emailed the lady in Tyler, and this is in December, and we go and see her, and trying to figure out how this works. And I really, really, really did not want Hannah and Emily to feel like they grew up in a clinic,
Yeah.
I did not want that, and I knew Kate wasn't making that choice, so it would be us making that choice for her, and I did not want our girls to resent Kate in any way. And so we were just kind of praying through, what would that look like? Well, so I had Emily in January, so we had told the lady when we met her in December, you're not going to see us for a little while, we're having another baby. And so in February of 2015, when Emily is a month old, our sweet friends that we went to high school with, they move to Tyler. And we were able, in that timing, to see this occupational therapist who insurance covered all of it. Wow. And I could not, in that particular therapy, I could not take Hannah and Emily with me. So my friend Amanda would meet me at the parking lot, and her little girl was in between Hannah and Emily. So she was 1. Is that right? Yeah, she was 1, and Kate was 2, and Emily's 2 months old. And Amanda would take both of them and her little girl. She has 3 little girls under 2. And they would either go to the pet store or the grocery store. And we did therapy. And then she would bring them back, and we would drive to her house. And Kate could take a nap there. I could feed her, and she could take a nap. And Emily could take a nap. And Hannah could play with her little girl's name's Abby. So Hannah could play with their Abby. And I had that time to sit with who's basically like my sister. We've been together since we were 15.
Oh, my gosh.
And I could sit there and say, this is what's going on, and we could pray together, and she or even just talking about crazy things how it feels like sometimes all you're doing is just baby stuff. I mean, we were just in that stage, but I would not have had that if we wouldn't have had that therapy. But then that afternoon, she would watch the 3 girls, and I would take Kate back, and we'd do an afternoon session of therapy. So, yeah, all the things that weren't supposed to happen, you weren't supposed to be able to have insurance cover it. And then, yeah, he puts our really precious, family friends there. And it made it to where it was a play date for my girls. They're getting to play. They're not in a clinic.
It's something they look forward to versus something
something they look forward to. And in that moment, I can remember one time this is silly, but we were driving back to Nacogdoches, and I remember thinking, is this the right thing to do? We're doing therapy on Tuesdays in Lufkin, and my aunt and uncle kept the girls. And then on Wednesday, you come home, you dump out your bag, and then Wednesday, all day we're in Tyler. And then you come home and dump your bag. And then Thursday, we're going back to Lufkin, and Randall's parents were watching the girls. So, like, we're just going. And I remember thinking, like, is this too much? And so one day we're driving home, and there's like this fly in our car, and it's flying around in the back seat, and Hannah starts laughing and blowing bubbles, which Kate thinks is hilarious. So she would like move her feet, and they're just having the best time, all giggling together. And I remember the Lord saying, like, y'all are together, like, it's okay. Like, you know, this can be our normal, and it's still sweet for them, you know? So yeah, that was definitely a way he provided for us in that, and taking care. So yeah, and then we got to do a lot of really sweet trips. We went to the Tyler Zoo and just different things while we were already there. So Hannah has those memories with Kate, and Amanda's Abby has memories with Kate, and then they're able to kind of fill Emily in on it, and we've got the pictures of them all together. So yeah,
which is just sweet. Extraordinary, all those pieces to come together. And then in the midst of that, Kate is kicking more doors down of things that she was supposed to not be able to do. Absolutely. And so in this process, and you'll have to just help me on timeline and make sure, but she starts obviously her communication goes through the roof. Yes. She's learning alphabet and ends up, like you said, ends up with
12 words.
12 words. Yeah. And then movement too becomes a big deal, right? She starts at some point, I guess, in this therapy, or at some point starts moving a whole lot more than she was ever supposed to. So that's right. She just continues to defy expectations. And something that you said that in one of your entries, we got to figure out what to call this. The memoir entries, this story that you've written. And I love this. You talked about learning, the Lord bringing you to 1 Corinthians chapter 13, where he talks about love. Yeah. And one of the things that you say is, and I wrote it down here, is I was always to believe that she could do something until she showed me that she couldn't. Right. And for you, that connected with the definition of love and what love is. That I'm going to believe that you can do this unless you show me that you can't. Yeah. When in this journey did that perspective really settle in for you? This belief that she could until something shows me otherwise. Yeah.
That particular day you're talking about, I was really struggling. I want to say Kate was probably a year old, or maybe even a little bit less than a year old. But I had tried, it had been a day of a lot of throw up and just wondering, like, Lord, why does it have to be hard for her to eat? You know, I don't understand. And I remember Hannah they were both asleep and Randall wasn't home yet, and just taking my Bible and just being like, I don't understand what you're doing, you know? And I don't know what you want me to do. Like, I feel like I cannot take care of my baby the way I should be able to. And I remember him saying very clearly to me, I want you to do two things. I want you to trust me, and I want you to love Kate. And I remember thinking, like, okay, loving her is not going to be hard, you know? But I remember thinking, like, 1 Corinthians 13, where love is defined, and reading that and getting to the part of scripture where it says love believes all things, you know, and thinking in loving her well, I really wanted to believe she could do anything, not because of her, but just the Lord could do that for her. And and then at the same time, if he told me no, wanting to be okay with that too, just entrusting her. So yeah, he definitely, and after that moment of being like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do, I remember going to Walmart that evening, and I had gotten the habit of like looking in baby car seats and trying to figure out, was the baby older or younger than the girls? And I remember I peeked in this car seat, and it was a little boy, and then out of the corner of my eye, I saw he was on oxygen. And so even in that moment, the Lord saying, I know it's hard for you to watch her to struggle to eat, but like you still have things to be thankful for. I didn't have to be scared when I laid her down that she was going to breathe, you know? So just, again, a way of him. And the way he said it was not like in a condemning voice, but it was just a sweet reminder of you have things to be thankful for, even in this, So I left Walmart with an appreciation, not just because Kate could breathe on her own, but just being reminded, like, you're right, and I just need to trust you. And so, yeah, that was definitely a sweet moment. But in those moments too, he's so good to just, just to speak. I don't think I've ever heard the Lord louder than those years where I had Kate. And I find myself now like fighting to hear him like I did, then for sure. So,
well, I'm glad you said that, because I've just got to ask you about that part of it, because listening to you talk about the way that you and God would speak is, I think it stands out. Yeah. It stands out, but it was so normal within this process. Was that something? A conversational relationship. That's the only way I know how to really describe what I hear you saying, but it's this very conversational relationship with God on your inner being.
Yeah.
Was that something that you'd ever experienced before, or do you feel like that was a deeper place in relationship that you went with the Lord, and he taught you to hear him that way in the middle of this process? I don't know. It's such an extraordinary piece of this story, the way that. How does that come about? Do you just realize one day, oh my goodness, I'm talking to God like he's my friend, or is this like a friend you already knew? And I don't know. Did you have any recognition of that?
Well, I've heard the Holy Spirit talk to my heart before, but I think, and it's not because of anything I was doing. I think just the Lord knew I needed to hear from him. I was hurting at times. And I also, I feel like now in saying like I fight for it, like he's still the same, and I'm still the same. So I feel like in those times I was having to press into him so much. And we had so many amazing people just praying for us. I know that was just his hand of blessing, but yeah, very much. I knew in trusting him when something was bothering me, I had to talk about it or else I couldn't have peace, So it was very much like that, but it wasn't anything I was doing. I feel like it was just him being gracious, and I could not have, I don't think I could have handled it if as well without the Holy Spirit and him just knowing, without me even saying anything to Randall. No one else knew if something was really hard sometimes or something happened during the day, but he's always with us. And so I think that's the first time too that I ever really had been home so much. And even though I had little people with me and I wasn't by myself, there was no one else that could help me the way that he could, So, I'm very, very thankful for that.
Earlier we talked about, and this would have been in the first part of our conversation, we talked about, people think, I could never go through that, and you discover the provision along the way. Wouldn't you say then that part of that provision is even relational, that part of the provision, God getting you through it, was the fact that his voice was so clear to you at these just perfectly right moments, that was part of that provision, is God saying, I'm going to be abundantly clear to you when you need it. Because it sounds like every one of these moments comes with, it seems like, as you describe this journey, it seems like every one of these moments comes with some interaction, some conversation that you have with God. Did you find that was part of the provision, was him speaking?
Yes, because him speaking and just reminding me that he's with me, and reminding me, like, I know you don't understand, but part of trusting him is not understanding, and part of him being my savior is trusting he does know best, and that he loves my girls, more than Randall and I do. And so just in trusting him, yes, that was very much just a provision. And all the little things he did, like none of our girls teethed, like their teeth just popped up in their head, like, just amazing things that he did that he didn't have to do. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, you got to tell the story. So this is one of my favorite stories, just because it's like sometimes God does things and you just know he's got this really wonderful sense of humor too. And I think it's a toilet, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got to tell the story about the toilet at the thrift store.
Okay. So Kate at this point is 4, and she has she's able to identify her letters of the alphabet. Like, she's just doing amazing things. And we would even notice, like, someone would say something funny and she would just giggle. Like, it was so much interaction. So I was looking for ways just to give her the opportunity. So we were looking into possibly potty training. And so we had asked the insurance, our physical therapist was like, yeah, I think you guys should try this, you know. So we're looking into 2 pieces of equipment, a crawler and a potty seat. And so the physical therapist fills out all the information, and she tells me, Kara, I'm so sorry, they only approved the crawler. They didn't approve the potty seat. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe.
Classic insurance. Like, they give you what you need, but half of what you need, right?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
So yeah, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I misunderstood. Maybe we weren't supposed to do that yet, you know? Well, this lady that I had taught with before I had Kate and Hannah texts me or message me, maybe she Facebook's messaged me and says, hey, I was in this thrift store in Lufkin and I just noticed they had some special needs equipment. And I was like, all right. So I'm thinking, I'm going to check this out because I don't know what it is, but you know, who knows? So we had been looking at a size small Rifton potty seat, which I believe at that time cost about $4,500 without
Okay, I was going to say, let's make sure we clarify. This is not something you go to Walmart and grab for a few bucks.
This is a normal kitty potty seat. Yeah.
Yes. This is an expensive piece of equipment. So I walk in and there is a size small Rifton potty seat for $25. And yeah, I mean, very next
Can you tell
day,
me about, like, what do you do in that moment when you see it? Do you laugh out loud? Do you just, I mean, what? Are you like getting money out of your pocket as fast as you can? Like, what are you?
Yeah, I'm sure my mouth just fell open because it's just like, you know, but yeah, the Lord definitely, in those moments, it made it so much easier to trust because it's like, yeah, you knew that was going to happen. And so you just brought this together for us. So I loaded that up and I took it home. So
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That is amazing. All right. Okay. So all the while, I mentioned it in our first section of our talk that you'd been writing.
Yeah.
So as you're sharing this with a community of people, I mean, this is a journey that, and I've heard you talk a lot about this, that this is obviously not something you walk through by yourself, that this whole community forms around you. And so as what was it like sharing your life and this season of your life with a larger community, as you're sharing this with people via email, people that you're living day to day with, people within church, like, just what was that like to go through this in the context of such a broad community?
Yeah, well, that's just another way that the Lord was really gracious to us, was the people he brought into our life. I think about things like Joy Ministry here at Fredonia Hill and Brittany Tucker, and how I would not have been able to be in the worship service where I desperately needed to be able to be reminded of who the Lord was and to claim it with my mouth. We definitely had community in that. Joy was the only place besides grandparents that Kate ever, stayed. But the graciousness of that and the community, we did send out emails when the girls were little, just felt like we had to share amazing things we were seeing and wanting God to get all the glory from all of the hard things and wanting it to be very clear that we were not just good, strong people, because that's so not true. But yeah, just walking through that and then just the amount of community, I know, the number of people that were praying for us, but yeah, all of that. And probably specifically more with community. I mean, Randall and I for sure felt the prayers and all going up. And then once Kate passed away to us unexpectedly. Like, we didn't see it coming. The community then that encircled not just Randall and I, but our girls, and just loved them really well. You know, we had people like just putting stuff on our porch. I remember Ashley brought a basket of stuff for the girls, and the first thing Hannah reached for was a necklace that had a K on it. So yeah, we were definitely loved well. And the whole point in writing it down is just wanting if it can encourage one person or wanting God to get all the glory for how he walked us through the sweet time we had with Kate, but how he also healed our girls' hearts and just made it very clear to them at a young age that all of our purpose, like, we're made to glorify God, but that could look so different in each of our lives.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you mentioned Kate passing very unexpectedly.
Yeah.
It took you guys by surprise, and but if as you look back, I think one of the things that stands out to me is that you are already in a place where, and you mentioned this in your letters, where you talk about giving to God her future, having to do that over and over again, and kind of saying, I'm praying for healing. I'm praying, for God, for you to continue to do the impossible, and not shying away from God and what you wanted, because you had an idea of what you wanted that to look like, but then also but God, also recognizing that whatever that looks like, I trust you, and if that healing is you bringing her home to you, then that's not what I want, but I trust you. Was your as you then walk through what is the unimaginable as a parent to have to face, you had already, though, dealt with surrendering her and knowing that her life was going to glorify God, and you'd watched that happen. As you grieve, what role does that play? The knowledge of, like, this extraordinary child has glorified God in ways that we could never imagine. Does that interact with the grief of that moment at all? Yeah.
I think for us, even looking back, so Kate passed away on May 20th, and that January, we had I don't know what you call it, I guess like an episode. Kate had always been really healthy when we had her, and in January she had strep throat, and she never ran fever when she was sick. She just was really sleepy, and so we had gone in and gotten antibiotics and all. And when I had gone in to check on her the second day she had antibiotics, I realized that she was having a seizure. And I was right by her bedside because I was about to get her up and feed her, and she stopped breathing. This is in January. And I was right there and instantly able to do CPR. She came right back. I called 911. I mean, all these things. But I think in that moment, and I just have to say this too, that the Lord, all that was going on in our home. Hannah was in our living room when I had to do CPR with Kate. A policeman and an ambulance driver came into our house and took Kate out, and Hannah and Emily didn't see any of that. Like, it's just amazing. But all that to say, in that January, when they took us to Houston from there, and Kate was not waking up. And the doctors were telling us, like, this is probably her new normal. Like, she's just going to lay here and be asleep. Like, this is the way things are now. And I can remember, like, wrestling with the Lord and saying, like, this is not okay with me. Like, this is terrible, And in the moment, him saying to my heart, like, in a kind, not a condemning way, but in a kind way, just reminding me, this is how doctors had said it was going to be from the beginning, And like, who am I to say this isn't fair when I've had all this sweet time with her? So I had to, I can remember Randall and I taking a walk, and that's the only time we ever left her in the hospital, but we didn't know if she could hear us or not, and we were both kind of processing. And so anyway, we had 2 days where she did not wake up, and we did not know if that was our new, like, this is our new benchmark, or this is what life is going to look like for her. And anyway, but as that Monday morning when I got a call, and it was Dr. Penny again, he pops back in, but he calls and says like, hey, I'm checking, how's our girl? And I just start to cry, and I say like, they're saying this is the new normal. Like, she's not waking up, and telling him all the things. And he says to me like, Kara, remember, she's in God's hands. Like only God knows what life looks like for her. So I left, I hung up, and Kate and I was in ICU. And so there was no place for us to stay. So we're sleeping like in the ICU waiting room. But we walked down there, and like I had the last 2 days, I say, good morning, Kate. But that morning she opens her eyes and she blows me a kiss. And so I remember like pulling out my phone and like recording her, because these doctors, like when you're like, no, she opened her eyes and she blew a kiss at me, they're like, yeah, okay, But anyway, but the Lord gave her back to us, And so we had from then January all the way to May. And I think the reason that timeline was so important to me was the Lord taught me, like, there, as a believer too, this is so easy to say, but like I got to kind of experience like going to heaven is not like, would not have been the hardest thing for me with Kate. Like it was easier for me, not on my own choice. I could have never chose to have let her go. But I think knowing, even though we had no idea she was about to go to heaven, I just feel like it was like she closed her eyes here and she opened her eyes, in heaven. And so all along the way, I felt like the Lord just reminded me of things that I knew, like heaven is a wonderful place. And just being reminded of that and that. So yeah, he definitely, even in preparing, even though we didn't know that was coming, and on our own, like on my own, I could have never said like, yeah, sign my kid up to be the one that has the stroke, and that gets to go to heaven early. Like I could not do that on my own, even if I knew it was going to bring like so much glory to the Lord. I just in my own strength could not say like, yeah, we want that, But him being so good, I mean, I just know the Lord can see things I can't see. And so I'm able to trust him, but I wouldn't have on my own been like, yeah, that's what we want to do. We want to do it that way, But yeah, just in that, and within me, I have such a greater hunger for heaven. Not just because Kate's there, although I can't wait to see her, but just knowing that, I feel like the Lord has changed my heart in that. The Lord has changed my heart, and just wanting to share him with people, not just so they'll be in heaven, but so they can experience like what we did, the peace and the hope. Like in the past, I feel like I would have been more likely to be like, Jesus is the way to heaven, and just kind of point to the side, but not want to have like a hard talk. But I feel like the Lord is teaching me that's the most important thing, to be intentional with. So he has definitely used Kate and the sweet time we had with her to deepen my faith, and then to just kind of change my heart in ways that are a little bit more kingdom minded. So,
yeah. Man, wow, thanks for going into that. I think when Paul talks about that our grief is in light of hope.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like hope is, what you're saying is that hope is so much, is it includes I'm going to see them again.
Yeah.
That, that's wrapped up in resurrection, and it includes that, but it's bigger than that.
Absolutely.
And you're talking about hope being bigger than I'll see you someday, but also giving a grander vision of even what our days that we're given are. And in so many ways, so many powerful ways, she really exemplifies just in the days that the Lord blessed her with, that he gave her, she magnified his goodness in extraordinary ways. And it's like, and that's what God can do. And that's like, that's the context of hope, is also what we have been given now in the ways that God wants to use that. So man, what a powerful perspective to have in what and who knows what life holds, but what you would probably think would be some of the hardest days of your life, you go, but to walk through that in the context of hope and God's blessing, that's extraordinary. So, wow. Well, give us, what was the date of that again? What year?
2017.
2017. We're in 2022. How do you even today?
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like for you guys now? In what ways are you still processing, and in what ways are you still seeing God interact with her story, and how it's just changed you and your family? And I mean, so where are you guys at now? And just give us a snapshot of that.
Yeah. I would say, that's a great question. I would say that the Lord has carried specifically Hannah and Emily through grieving, because I don't even think before Kate went to heaven that they realized how different life was for Kate. I mean, that was just their sister that they loved, you know? So I feel like in some ways heaven is sweeter for them too, if that makes sense. But yeah, I feel like the Lord is still very much using what we've walked through, which is so good for my heart. I think it's been almost 5 years since she went to heaven, and I believe 16 moms have crossed my path that have either lost a child, and I believe there's 2 or 3 moms that have had a diagnosis similar to ours. And so I get to share with them like just a tad bit of like what Jesus has done for us, and to pray with them. And I feel like hopefully that's encouraging to them, but it also is so good for my heart because it's just a reminder of, it can continue to bring good. So that's definitely one thing. And we still do things like Kate and Hannah share a birthday. So July 3rd in my heart is Hannah's day. And then on May 20th is the day that we celebrate Kate. And we just try and look for little things that we can do for people that we loved, that loved her. And so we get to do some things for them, and the girls get to be a part of that. And we just kind of celebrate her life through that. So, Wow,
that's incredible. That 16 times in the last 5 years, you've been able to speak life and hope into, for many people, what seems like a desperate, difficult situation, and the Lord's used your story there. That's amazing. Yeah. Well, golly, Kara, thank you so much for spending time with us here. I know that you get a ton of joy out of being able to share what God has done in your family and in your life, and in Kate's life, and Hannah and Emily's life, and Randall's life. I mean, but at the same time, those are deep things, and so I appreciate you being willing to share that with us. This is friends. We always kind of say, let us know how these stories impact you, and what the Lord says and does in your heart, in your life, as you listen to the ways that He has worked in the lives of others, and would certainly love to hear that. And in these 2 episodes, just what has stood out to you, and how has the Lord used the Cooper testimony to impact you. We would really love to hear that.
For sure.
We've got some more guests coming up that we're going to be able to dive into their story. And there's more even in this story to tell. We'll have to wait for a later day. But Kara, thank you so much for being here. And friends, if you've got people you want us to interview, or want to just talk to us about what ways this has impacted you, please shoot us a note.
Yeah, you know the drill now. It's stc@fredoniahill.org. We'd love to hear and get an email from you, or just pull us aside and let us know.
That's right. Kara, thank you.
Yeah.
Adios.